Hello, this is Mike Oliver with a demonstration of the Service-Oriented Dynamic Orchestration Service. Now, SODOS, as for short, is a service that allows you to control the sequence of events within a service-oriented architecture of standardized service contracts with a canonical schema. Now, that's a long phrase. What that means is we can control the execution of an application for any event, and we can control it by sequencing the services that are called and processing along the way. And then if we need to change the processing, change the sequence, we don't have to change any code, we just change a row in the database. So let's demonstrate. I have already entered 3 steps in my step definitions table. The steps definition table is what controls the sequence of steps and the actions that are taken at each step. So if we look at the table layout, I have a step name, can be anything. I have an event key that is what tells the system what step definitions to retrieve, and I'll show you more of that in a minute. We have a description, which is just plain text, criteria clauses, which are used by the system if you want to run a rules or some other rules engine to determine if this step should be executed or not. And if not, it will then skip to the next step. A script body, which will allow me to actually put logic into the step definition and run that logic, which could be validating data, could be doing some processing. It could be just about anything you can imagine. There are other fields, and I'll show you those by editing this first record. So I can go in and edit this record and add a description. This appends text to the payload. And I've got criteria clauses, rules engine scripts, etc. Script body, which can be JavaScript or ECMA script. A Java class path. I can actually define a Java class that will be instantiated and executed when this step runs. A step endpoint. This can be a REST interface, it can be a SOAP interface, it can be a JMS interface, it can be a JMS queue, it can be anything that you want to put in here that will be understood by the system. Then the sequence number. So this one will run first when this event happens. And then we have the orchestration type. This can be any number of different things. It can be a database, it can be JavaScript, it can be Spring, it can be struts, it can be WSDL for a SOAP interface, or JMS. In this case, my test scripts are all REST, so I'm going to make that a REST interface. Then what kind of operation type are we looking at? And here we've got different kinds of types. REST post and REST get are the 2 most common. Put is where you're updating a record, and that's also common. But you could have REST delete, and then you could have a JMS publish list, which is a publish and subscribe event operation. We're going to use REST post. And the endpoint type can also be different. So you could have an XML, you can have a JSON, you can have it standard REST, a number of different choices there. So we can interface with just about any kind of web service or service-oriented architecture endpoint that we want to, and any kind of operation type. Now in this test we're just using REST and JSON, but you get the idea. So I'm going to save that. And that shows that it saved successfully. And I'm going to go back in and look at my step definitions. So when the step definitions run, the first thing that happens is that the event key is read from the incoming event, and then all of the step definitions that match that event key are then queued up and made available in the orchestrator. So let's have a look at that. I'm going to go in and create a new event. And this is a web interface, and this probably wouldn't be used very often, but it could be. Normally this will come in from an API. It'll be part of a service-oriented architecture inside an enterprise service bus or in-memory data fabric. But I'm going to give it a test, an event key of test1. I can put more information in here, and this could be used by my the services that are being called. I also have fields in here for capturing errors along the way, and for keeping track of where we are in the process by keeping track of the last location executed. My payload, I'm going to just make this simple. This is a simple text payload, but this could be complex. It could be JSON, it could be comma-separated values, it could be XML, it could be a serialized Java. But in this case, it's just going to be a plain piece of text. Now the 3 steps that I've already defined will happen in sequence, and they will each append some text to this payload before saving. And now that has been saved, and if we scroll down and have a look, we'll see that what happened was each of the steps along the way appended some text to this payload. So we have the payload that I originally entered, including up to the serialized Java, and then step 1, step 2, and step 3 all appended text to my sequence. Now that's important because that was determined by the sequence in these step definitions. Here's the sequence. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say that I want to change this step number 2. And I want step number 2 to run last. So I'm going to say step 2 runs last. And I'm going to do that by making the sequence number 20 instead of 2, which means it's the highest and it should run last. That's the only change I need to make. No change in code. So now I'm going to enter another step execute. And this is going to be the same test key, test1. This time the payload is going to say, this payload should be appended step 1, then 3, then 2. Now, when we scroll down, we should see, should go step 1, then 3, then 2. Step 1, then 3, then 2. So I've changed the sequence of the steps, and remember, we have total control over those steps. So we can do anything at any time. If we want to insert one in the middle, we can do that. If we want to remove one, we can do that. We want to replace one with something else in that same step location, we can do that. So we can add debugging, we can add logging, we can add just about anything we want to at any point in that sequence of steps. So that's what the service-oriented dynamic orchestration service will do for you.